sheep brain looks like and its internal structures. So here we have my friend Rodwell right here, and this is not his brain, but this is another sheep brain. So here we have different parts of the brain. So we're going to be making two cuts in this tutorial. We're going to be making a sagittal down the middle and a coronal through the side. And so here we have the posterior side of the brain. We have the anterior or rostral part of the brain, and that's about it. Now let's go into parts of the brain. So the brain is going to be surrounded by dura, which is this sort of like skin layer. So it's going to be the outermost, toughest, and most fibrous of the layers that surround the brain and the spinal cord. And all it does is provide a protective coating around the brain. So it sort of keeps everything all together. Moving on to the cerebral hemispheres and the cerebellum. Here in pink, we have the frontal lobe. So this area right here is going to be the frontal lobe, which is involved in decision making, as well as problem solving and planning. And it's also where most of our personality and emotional traits are formed. We have the parietal lobe in orange right here, which is just mainly this upper part right here. And the parietal part is involved in processing sensory information it receives from the body. And that includes spatial sense and navigation and sort of being able to see where you're going. We have the temporal lobe, which is going to be this part on the side right here. And so in the temporal lobe, it's involved in processing auditory information. So you can think of the temporal lobe like where your ears would be. And so that's important for processing semantics in both speech and vision. So we will have on specifically the left side of the brain, we will have Wernicke's as well as Broca's aphasia, which is both involved with speech. And if you study neurology, you will learn more about those. Next, we can go on to the occipital lobe, which is in teal. So this whole back part right here, so the occipital lobe coordinates mostly vision, and so that's all it's mainly responsible for. This part in yellow right here that the yellow pin is attached to, we have the cerebellum. Now the cerebellum has to do more with voluntary movements such as keeping yourself upright, posture, balance, coordination, and sort of helping everything stay balanced and all together. So if you need to move around, if you need to just walking, the cerebellum is responsible for making sure that you walk without falling over. Okay. Continuing, here we have a underpart view of the brain from the bottom. And so we're going to have the olfactory bulb in yellow. So the olfactory bulb, we can see are sort of larger, this part right here. And this one is unfortunately missing. But the olfactory bulb is usually larger in animals that use a lot of scent. For example, dogs. But we have the olfactory bulb, which is again a neural structure that is involved in the sense of smell. Continuing, we have the optic nerves in orange, this orange pin. So this entire thing is where the optic nerves would have been. So the optic nerves are going to be able to transmit visual information from the retina or your eyes to the brain. And then if we look at this part, the optic chiasm, this middle part right here where they connect and they cross over. So in the optic chiasm, it's this X-shaped structure, and it's formed through the crossing of the optic nerves, and then again the optic nerves connect to the brain, to the eyes. So it's just a meeting point for both of those. Continuing, we have the pituitary gland in pink. So this gland right here is going to be our pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland is a small gland that controls other sort of endocrine glands and has a role in physical growth and development. So usually if people don't have a pituitary gland, they struggle to grow up, or they don't release enough hormones to grow in general. Okay. We can look at the pons and teal right here. So this is going to be the pons, this area right here. So the pons is a part of the brainstem that links the medulla oblongata, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as the thalamus. And it's involved in regulating your breathing and transmitting information between different parts of the brain. And then if we look at the medulla oblongata, which is this little end piece right here, it controls automatic functions, again, like breathing, digestion, making sure your heart beats, and blood vessel function, as well as swallowing and sneezing. Okay. Continuing on, we have these fissures. So we have the medial longitudinal fissure in yellow. So this part right here, where this line where it goes right through the brain, is going to be the fissure. So it basically just splits the brain in half. And then we also have a transverse fissure in the back that splits this whole cerebellum from the actual brain. And so if we look at it, the dura goes in between these, and that's what sort of creates these different hemispheres in the brain that we have. Now let's go more into the internal brain. So here we have made a sagittal cut into the brain. And so we basically sliced it right down the middle, as if we cut it this way like that. And then we have this. So again, we have our olfactory bulb, which we can see a little bit more clearly now, right here. We have our optic nerve, which again is right here, is coming out. And then we can sort of see where the rest of the nerve is. And then this is again where the optic chiasm would be as well. So now let's look at the thalamus. So the thalamus is going to be this part of the brain right here, like that. And so the thalamus responds as sort of a relay station for signals coming into the brain. So it's involved in sort of your consciousness, sleep, and sensory interpretation. So like anything you feel, touch, how hot it is outside, how cold it is, your thalamus is able to sort of relay those signals to the rest of your brain and then deal with them. We have the hypothalamus, which is right below the thalamus, and the hypothalamus is responsible for behaviors such as your hunger and thirst, as well as sort of the maintenance of the body temperature. So again, we can see that sensory interpretation that we got from the thalamus is right next to the hypothalamus right here. So they're related, so they're right next to each other, and body temperature is important to maintain. If we look at the pons in light blue, it's going to be this part right here. It regulates breathing and relays information between different parts of the brain. And then again, we have the medulla oblongata, and then that's again going to control autonomic functions and links the brain with the spinal cord. Here we have the corpus callosum in red. So the corpus callosum right here is going to split the brain. So it's a large band of neural fibers that connect the left and right cerebral hemispheres, allowing communication between them. So the corpus callosum is known to be cut to help people with epilepsy and seizures. And that's sort of something interesting that is seen to work as a therapeutic agent in resolving people who have severe seizures. What else do we have here? We have the pineal gland, this little gland right here. Again, it produces melatonin, and then that helps regulate your sleep and wake cycles. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, etc. Now we have the gray matter, which is going to be this part. Anything in this part right here. So the gray matter is involved in muscle control, sensory perception, memory, emotions, and speech. And then the white matter is basically anything in this area. So the white matter transmits signals between different parts of the cerebral cortex and between the cortex and the rest of the nervous system. Now we're going to make a coronal cut. So as if we cut it this way like this. And then so we cut both sides of the brain, and then we have this. So we're looking at it, this is like the back side. So the pons and the medulla would be there. So we're looking at it as if you're looking at it from the front. You're looking at your friend from the front, and you cut their brain in half, so you're just looking at their back half. So here we have our corpus callosum again, which can be seen here as it connects everything. We have our pineal body, which is right here. And the pineal body is another term for the pineal gland, which again produces melatonin. And then that regulates your when you're asleep and when you're awake. Next, we have the CA3 regions of the hippocampus in orange. So that's this part right here. So the neurons sort of come along like this, and then the CA3 neurons are found more on this part right here where this pin is. And so the CA3 region is part of the hippocampus, and it's a region of the brain that's involved in learning and memory. And it's specifically thought to be involved in the storage of new memories. While on the other hand, when we have the CA1 region of the hippocampus, that's going to be involved in learning and memory. So damage to this area can cause problems with forming new memories, which is quite interesting. And our final slide here, we have this substantia nigra, and we have the pituitary gland in pink. So the pituitary gland can be seen again right here. And then the substantia nigra is a region of the midbrain that plays an important role in the reward, addiction, and movement sort of thing. And it's particularly noted for its role in Parkinson's disease. So it's where the death of dopamine-producing cells in the region leads to the symptoms of the disease. So Parkinson's has been known to, again, affect memory, but also we have the tremors from Parkinson's is how we can sort of tell that someone has it, or if you know someone like that. And then the pituitary gland, again, the small gland at the base of the brain that controls other endocrine glands and plays a key role in the growth and development. Again, produces growth hormone, as well as other hormones that control the function of other endocrine glands. And that's going to be it for this tutorial of a sheep brain dissection.